I want to
Yeah.
thank everyone for being here. I know this material is really real life. We're talking about real life, and unfortunately, real life is not fun and games or a fantasy. Real life is white supremacy. So thank you everyone for being here. It's not you are here because you have some sort of power in you, and that power is wanting to promote some sort of change. And yeah, it's really important that we hear and we do the reading. So I really appreciate everyone who thinks this is a good investment at a time, who thinks this can be constructive. So welcome to the I think third discussion of Yurugu. And just a question I have for everyone. I just want to hear like a little summary synopsis of like the pages 59, no 51 through 69. Can we just get like everyone go take turns sharing what they thought those pages were about, so you can see where everyone is and understanding the text. So I'll start, give my short synopsis. I felt she's talking about how the Europeans have used time to be a very linear, oppressive force. She's going further into how these philosophers have been molding their asili to be one that satisfies the Utama Rojo. So she's just continuing to break that down, but she's added time into the mix. So I'll pass it. I'm just gonna go to, well, it's probably different for everybody, but I'll pass it to Shanae.
Yeah, Shayna.
Yeah, my
So
bad.
it's okay. I wrote down three bullet points. The first was time, like you mentioned, and the line versus the circular um, time,
Mhm.
and the events in that, and the eternal cycle of life provides the transcendence. That was my first bullet point. And then my second was the cause and effect, and she links the links between the past, present, and future, and how it's different for Europeans, but and Africans.
Mhm.
And then the third was science, um, and how the African worldview is more spiritual, and the spirit is primary. So those were the three key points that I took away from the section.
Oh, thanks for, you can pass it to someone.
I'm gonna pass it to Ash.
Okay. What I got from it, well, the first part was talking about kind of like literacy and like literacy being a like litmus test for if you are like an actual civilization or people who can think, and how like Europeans rely on literacy, but she kind of goes through like it's the comedic MDW NTR, and how it actually provides a much more like useful tool to like communicate, because it's not just like this word means this. It has different meanings in different scenarios, different types of, and she goes over like symbols and some symbolic, I think, versus symbol, like the differences between those words, which I thought was cool. And then yeah, like everyone else was saying, ideas about lineality, and how because Europeans see everything linearly, then they have no sense of like control because they always fear the future, this abstract perfect future that they can never make. So then they just like rely on science to like show them whatever future that they want, even though it may not actually be like able to predict that. Yeah, I guess I'll pass it to Ezekiel.
So yeah, the main points I guess would be like Ashley said, literacy, the new dominant mode. So um, I guess they kind of talked about how logic formed and became a kind of priority over emotions. A little, she went into more depth in that. Um, yeah, pretty much everyone's been hitting it. That's pretty much what I've been getting. Science, and the effects of that. I have some things because this was a little harder for me to understand. So there's some things I'd like to discuss. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass it on to Sarah.
Cool. Yeah, the part about the symbology was a bit confusing to me. I think the biggest takeaway and like what I was just highlighting a lot was kind of like the last 2 pages when it's just like this absolute way of thinking, whether it's like written text is the most elite and is the only way to convey information, or like rationality, blah blah blah. Like that's what leads to the fact that like European culture, if they were to interact with like a different culture, like it will justify their like one road to reality, like the only way of existence, versus like so many like indigenous African and like Asian Asili like doesn't believe in just like this super linear way of thinking. So just trying to think of how like stuff from like the written text, like just their approach to like whether someone is like literate or not, like how that contributes to like colonization was really interesting, or justifying it. And obviously only a certain type of people colonize. So yeah. I will pass it to Trey.
So yeah, first of all, like I really love reading these pages, and I have a lot of notes that I want to get through like authentically and organically with the group. But to answer Swat's question, I saw like I took away the constant need for European culture to like completely demean and belittle other cultures in order to like tell the world that theirs is the dominant one and the most superior one, and the creation of superiority. But on the surface level, like white people, European culture, white people are really like fragile. So that's why they have this complete need to be in control of their emotions and present as these rational, robotic beings. And also, of course, the time thing really like affected me as well, because I've always perceived time to be like really oppressive, and actually reading in the book that time is oppressive, I was like, oh my God, it's so true. And like the fact that the future is just like this really basic equation that doesn't really matter because it's just white people's need to escape. It's like time is a form of escapism and a form of oppression. And I mean, I took away a lot from the chapter. So like answering this question, I'm just gonna keep saying stuff. One more thing is there's a part that really resonated with me in a really like reflective way, because I could like, I'm just gonna read it. I wrote this note. It says Plato said this about people, about man. He said that he is concerned with an inferior part of the soul. And I thought, what the fuck? How could any part of your soul be inferior? And to me, that was really interesting, seeing the levels of the hierarchy that the European thought process is able to put on our existence. Like your soul has a hierarchical level. But yeah, that sounds interesting. Pass it. I meant pass it to is that everybody?
Yeah, this is the last one. But I don't know if she's gonna be able to speak, and we're gonna be able to.
Oh yeah, I'm not. Oh, is it me or you said
Oh
Mary?
no, we're talking about Mary, but we don't.
Oh
know
yeah, because I'm not speaking. I'm not speaking. Okay.
Okay, so I have another question. This is for everyone because I'm sure.
Walking home, I can just say that
Okay.
I enjoyed what I read of the chapter, between 51 and 69. I really like the fact that we're talking about the middle nature and how it centering from that type of thought will completely separate, will completely change the Asili of the okay, bear with me. Yeah, so sorry. I liked how they mentioned like learning from the middle nature will open up your mind in a way that it constructs time differently. Science is everything that everybody's basically said. Science and time is reconstructed. Okay, sorry, I can't breathe or talk.
Okay.
So we'll get that.
Okay. So the next question before we can start the discussion is: in what ways have you felt time to be an oppressive force, or in what ways are you, or if you want to answer different questions, are you able to like understand your fear and anxiety a little bit more now due to the text and maybe where it may stem from? Okay, so the first question is, when have you felt time, or in what ways has time been an oppressive force in your life? Or are you able to understand your fear and anxiety a little bit more due from the text or from
I,
contextualized text? Okay.
I would like to answer that question first, only because that I believe that has been a major construct for me. Being somebody who is dyslexic, even though I don't like to own that too much, but me and I are not friends in lots of circumstances throughout my whole education at university. And then I realized that the fearing anxiety came from basically, if you do not come at this time, if you do not, like, if you're late to work, it's a mark on your character, it's a mark on your reliability, when you could be the kind of person that, let's say in the universe, constantly accidents happen around you, drama happens around you, like of course we all have to assess for the random things, but there's so much stuff that happens in between that I'm just constantly in a state of feeling like I always have to explain myself, and that fear and anxiety comes from those markers that I would say in European culture is marked that if you're not on time, like, you know how they say Black people time, not wanting that label.
I say
Like
what?
you know, like how people say, oh, you're on Black people's time, not wanting that label on me.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah, CP, yeah, CCP.
anxiety around that as well, even if whether it's within my range of whether it's my fault or not. I just hate that stigma
Mm.
and say about that.
Yeah, I think the whole CPT colored people's time could be definitely related to the European Asili. Um, I'll ask. How have I felt time to be an oppressive force is I guess is really prominent in the education field, the people activity when I was in school, and I would so-called stress about like these assignments being due. You know, that would cause a lot of like mental stress for me before I was like aware of the system I was living in. And also when it comes to fear and anxiety, a lot of my older fears was like a fear of failure, and that comes from like a perceived reality where I don't have enough time to be successful because it takes so much longer for Black people to become successful compared to white people. But and that also was came from a lot of anxiety came from there too. Is that like, do I have enough time to do everything I want to do? But now that I've like thrown away the whole European concept of time, I don't have any worries about that anymore. Nor do I see time as an oppressive force anymore because I control time. I control my own time, make time for the things I need to do and whatnot. So I shall pass it to Ezekiel.
Okay. For me, I think time has been the most like an example where time has been the most oppressive for me. I think, we kind of have these milestones that we're supposed to hit as, as we grow older, kind of these expectations, which can be really oppressive. Because when you don't meet those milestones or those expectations, as Mary said, it's like a mark on your character. So I mean, lately for a while now, I kind of haven't I try not to let time control me or, kind of cause that anxiety because it's a man-made construct, you know. Um, as people as people get older, it's like you're supposed to start feeling bad about growing older, but I don't really see it like that. And I haven't seen it like that for a while. That's, yeah. So I'll go ahead and pass it to Ash. Did you go, Kamario?
I can always predict when someone's gonna say my name. It's so funny. Like I literally always know. Yeah, I really like this whole section just resonated with me so much because all of 2019 was me staring at a clock, incredibly depressed and anxious at this horrible, shitty job. Literally, I would write when I was in elementary school all the way to high school. I would write down every hour of the day in school and then cross it out because that's how much I hated being there and like waited. So like time, I've been like obsessed with time and how oppressive it is for like since I was a kid. And so I really enjoy this chapter. And I think time has been an oppressive force in like all of history. The whole like exploitation of workers happened because clocks happened and you had to force people to come in at a certain time. And like people in factories would literally like the people who own the factories would change the times on the clocks and to make people stay longer and stuff. So like time is like pretty like evil, like linear time. I think I've always thought of it as being really evil. And it reminded me a lot of like how much of like what we read and watch and stuff is always about white men and their obsession with the future and about having purpose, and how a lot of people like pick up on that anxiety and also become fearful of the future and want to know their purpose. And like that's why I really liked this chapter, because I think we've all been indoctrinated to be obsessed with time and it's super unhealthy for like our well-being. Yeah, I'll pass it to who didn't go? Did you go, Trey? Okay, I'll pass it to Trey.
So yeah, I've experienced time being an oppressive force when I remember the exact moment where I like decided that time was like something that was not constructive or sustainable or like something that's healthy. I remember I just turned 23 years old, and then someone said, "Oh my God, you're so old. You're 23," and I was like, "Wow, 23 seems like a pretty young age." And at that moment, like something triggered in my mind where I thought ages was like a construct. It's not real. Like we don't actually have numbers hovering above our heads, so there's no such thing as age. So I literally just threw away the concept of age. So when people ask me how old I am, I usually say like infinite. Like I don't know, it doesn't matter. It's not a real thing, and time's not a real thing either. You know, so I try to, and I always tell myself that I create my own time. Like if I want to do something, I have to create time for it. I hate when people say I'm so busy, because no one's busy. You're just being programmed. You know, you're being programmed by outside forces, or maybe even yourself. I don't know, but I know it, like you can create time for anything you want. But yeah, it's my time.
Wow. Sarah, do you want to answer?
Yeah, I think in short, I agree with what everyone's been saying. I resonate with like what Ezekiel said just about like these markers, these supposed markers that exist, and like if you don't hit them at certain ages, or if you hit them maybe too early or something like that, like just there's so much communal judgment. So just trying to like separate myself from that, and yeah, just do things literally like, yeah, not be bothered, just in terms of just like people I grew up with, like had like getting married or whatever, like buying a house, doing certain things, like much like I'm not on that timeline at all, and just being like whatever, that's not like necessarily what I want, so that's okay.
Timeline.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's everywhere. I'm gonna pass it to someone. Ray, Celia, Shayna, either of you guys want to answer?
Sarah, you're muted.
I can answer.
Go ahead, Celia.
Okay. Can you remind me of the question just one more time?
How has time been an oppressive force in your life? And how are you able to understand your fear and anxiety more? You're reading the ISIS papers, so that is also beneficial to dealing with fear and anxiety. It also talks about fear and anxiety in that book as well.
Yes, it was in chapters 1 and 2. So to answer your question, some of the examples given were a lot of the same examples that I have, dealing with work and school, and like what Mary said about just that marker, that CPT time, because that was me. I was always late to all the meetings. I was always late to everything. Lunch, I'm late to my own lunch. So but it was just that I was just on a different, I feel like I was just always on a different vibration. I was always on a different path, and the stuff that was important to me, the stuff that was important really to the company, somehow, some way I was always on time for that, you know. So it's like a pipe bust and I'm right there, right on time. So the stuff that mattered, I felt like I was where I needed to be, and that was kind of like my aha moment with time, and just dealing with it, and my anxiety, just dealing with white supremacy and racism. You know, we're always living in their paradigm, and it's always about what they think, and not what we feel naturally. So we're always fighting against that, and just that alone gives you anxiety. Worrying about the future, like Ashley was saying, she touched on just like purpose, and you know, all these things really come naturally. And just like even joining this book club, like we are all here together for a reason at this time, and there's nothing else around that, or what you've been through, you know, in the past, or what we're going to go through in the future that's going to affect the time that is now. And reading things like this and ISIS papers, and you know, you get the theology that you need to understand what you're dealing with in a way that helps you relax. So now we can relax, let things happen naturally. Now that you can remove yourself and look at the situation from a space of observation, instead of you just always being in it, we can rid ourselves of that anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah. Like learning about the system truly allows you to at least mentally escape it. You know, if you're aware of something, it's hard for that thing to affect you as much than when you're not aware of it. You know, case in point, myself, I prior to this book, no, even prior to my learning thing, like before I was aware of trauma, I was traumatized to the point where I had no like regular human emotions. I had to learn how to care about people, I had to learn how to be happy, I had to learn how to like, you know, just my regular human emotion, just how we're having to learn how to be free of this race and white supremacy. So everything comes with the awareness. So thanks for sharing that, Celia. I think we still have more. Shayna, would you like to answer?
Sure. So time has kind of oppressed me ever since I was a kid. I went to Catholic school, which is really strict. And I kind of just had a thought that clicked in my mind, is that like we will always stand in single file lines. So I kind of like put that dot together, like with time and lines and things like that. Everything was really linear. So it kind of started from going to Catholic school, from kindergarten to 8th grade, and then that kind of just that anxiety about time kind of just it it stuck with me like to this day. And even as a graphic designer, they're like really tight deadlines that you have to meet it, or you're like considered, you know, a failure. Like you didn't meet this deadline, like you're kind of like out. Um, so yeah, those anxieties kind of have stayed with me like forever. And I'm still learning how to not be so anxious about time, and like about the success thing, about like you don't have to meet every milestone everybody else meets, kind of like what Sarah mentioned earlier. That everybody's on a different time circle. I don't want to say timeline, I want to say a time circle. But yeah, so I'm still working through that, through my anxieties.
Yeah, I love to see people applying the knowledge, even if it's something that's like considered small. It's still like, you know, a step, all necessary steps. So thanks for that. Ray, would you like to tell us how time has been a oppressive force in your life, or how you deal with your anxiety?
Yes. Still struggling. Let me just say that. Definitely time. I wouldn't say like runs my life, but I am very cautious and I think about it all the time. Like when it comes to time and doing things, and I think it's just like this idea of like when things close or like hanging out or I'm going to a function. Like if you say be there at 3, I'm there at 3. Like I'm there at 2:30. Like I don't know. It's just this idea of me just like in a hurry and want to get there. But and then again, like I don't know how to like say it, because even when I'm there, I'm just there to say hi and bye and I'm ready to go. Like, you know, I'm not really like pressured on the time. I just wanted to stop in and say hi and then I'm out. But I am still in the process, working on that, working on really being able to say like, it's okay I get there and not have to get there on time. But I think honestly, like my personality is very organized in time. So I think time ties back into organization for my life, because everything needs to be scheduled for me, or I feel like everything's out of whack. Like I want to know exactly what I'm doing for work. Like I need to know. I don't want to just come in here and just be like, oh, what am I doing for work today? You know, or what time I start work, so I know I get off at 5. So I don't know. It's just like being able to relax at some point, but also keep the organization in my mind.
Noella, are you gonna be able to answer?
Hi. So I put a little response in the chat, but I would just say, in context to learning, I've always believed that, you know, having a set deadline for, let's say, a research paper, it can really prevent people from putting the most of what they know and what they gain from the information they researched. It devalues it when you place a timeline on learning, and that's just something that's always stuck with me as a learner, that I'd rather turn everything in at the end of the semester and really get the enriching learning experience that I crave, rather than, you know, an assignment every week. But yeah, that's a little bit.
Alrighty.
Can I add this though? One more thing before we move on. In Kemet, in the meta netter, Mary did bring this up. I wanted to mention this really quickly. They did have certain things that they did as far as time goes. So the construct totally isn't, you know, so bizarre for us, but it was around nature. It was centered around what's happening with the earth, with the planet, like how we have seasons and how the sun comes up and the sun comes down. So there's certain activities that you should do during the day that you shouldn't do at night. And this was kind of like their kind of construct of time, and always related back to nature. And I don't know what the young lady's name was who just spoke, but I like what she said about organization, because we do have to have organization. We do have to adhere to that, you know, kind of like that universal law of just nature and and order, because there is an order, just like the sun goes around, you know, just like the earth goes around the sun. That rotation is an order. It happens annually. So there is an idea of time, but just not in the way that white Europeans have led us to believe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's in the European behavior, in the European nature, to what she calls reductionism. They reduce everything to a simple concept, because the simpler the concept it is, the easier it is to control that concept and the people around that concept. This is why, you know, time is so linear not secular anymore, or as it was for our ancestors and those of the who practice the African worldview. So does anyone have anything they want to share from pages 51 through 69?
Yeah, it's like something that I really wanted to reiterate by reading aloud to the group, and it's on page 52, and he's just talking about how what European thought does to other cultures and how, well, like Spa says, reduces it and makes it, smaller or like more like childish or like quote unquote boyish. European thought targets and demeans non-white cultures. The mind is governed by uncritical acceptance, self-surrender, automatism, passivity of mental condition, lavish employment of emotions, hypnotic trance, complacency, uses dream language, and is the victim of illusion. Also in a deep, long sleep and lazy. And we've all seen like those figures and those characters of like lazy Black people, lazy Mexicans. You've all seen like those like racist archetypes that have been created by white people. And it's funny how that even those creations are connected to time. Lazy. If you're lazy, you can't do things on, guess what, on time. So that's the I jotted down from the readings.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you want to like.
Yeah, I would love to like chime in on that. How like she mentions the European like the European mentality is lazy, because if you understand slavery, it was forcing millions of people to do labor that you didn't want to do. So I've always understood white people to be very fucking lazy. You have to be lazy to create slavery, because yeah. So thanks for like reiterating that, reminding us that slavery happened because white people are destructive, lazy people, the Europeans. And it's all under Assyria. Yeah, silly. Maybe I should read this. This is what I highlighted. It's on the next page. Page 53. And it says, maybe I'm gonna read the sentence before it as well, just in case. In fact, European academias create such non-minds. In each of these instances, including Havelock's critique of the mental habits of humankind before Plato, the statements made the ideological significance. They are supporting a chosen way of life, a set of beliefs. The objective is to establish the way of life as superior to all which either preceded it or that is different from it. It is the ideological nature of Platonic epistemology that makes this possible, and epistemology dictated by the European asili carried in a cultural gene. So this was just brewing. This is telling us that like this is what the European destiny, manifest destiny, maybe it was the European destiny to create a keywords way of life where they are controlling everyone who is not white and dominating them. And if I'm wrong in this statement, please correct me. But do not think I am. Any comments?
Yeah, I also highlighted that part. That part really resonated with me when you think about school, and I really like that she put, in fact, European academies create such non-minds. It's like such a perfect description of like what school produces, like people who are just not thinking, like and just like existing, and just meeting deadlines and just passing one little hurdle over another until they're able to get a paper that says that they can get a job. And like the whole society creates like really just doesn't value critical thinking because it's set up that way from childhood. And so I like that line a lot.
Mm-hmm. And on the same page, I also
I wanted to say something. I definitely agree with Ash just said about how what you said as well about how school creates like non-minds, and when you're in the classrooms, you can see that. I have a vivid memory about when I had realized like everyone who goes to these colleges have to write an essay about how they want to do good for the world. And I was sitting down in class one day, and then I realized that everyone in this classroom said the exact same thing I said, but in their own way. And the world is not saved, and nothing's actually beneficial is happening on a global, massive scale. So this whole stuff is not real. And then hearing people talk, you can hear people not being able to formulate their own thoughts. What they can do is regurgitate information. And it's just being able to like go back in time and absorb what's been happening, how people are not actually rational. They're not actually rational or cognizant of anything. It's just complete disimbalance. That's what I personally believe. But yeah, and also this is from page 53, and it's just more data, and I'm just gonna read it. The philosophy underlying the Republic says that human beings fit into neat categories, that they are suited to specific tasks by nature, and will be happiest doing that for which they are best suited, and that such is best for the order of the whole. Do you guys hear all that?
Yeah, I heard that, and also I had the last sentence right after that highlighted. The Republic is perfect because it is absolute. I think if you understand this, we can understand why we have like a lot of people who see everything literally in like black and white. It's either this or that, because the way in which the European thinks is like in a this or that manner. It's not really rational. It's not nuance. It's just okay, absolute, and that's a really bad way to exist as a people, as a society. Would you guys agree or disagree?
Yeah, I also highlighted that part. I think that part is really important about fitting into neat categories. And I think we all do that to kids when we always ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, and then they come up with a word, and then that word is who they are. And it's all very like constrained, and everyone is like walking around trying to like fit into this category, but no one really fits. So they're like all perpetually like unhappy because they can't fit into whatever stereotype like white people forced onto them. And I remember like reading this type of stuff when I was learning about like Marxism, and like just in general, like the production of something, when you force someone to just do one task over and over, like if you're making like, I don't know, shoes, and you force one person to just make shoelaces all day instead of like him going through the whole process of making the shoe, and maybe he only makes one shoe that day, but that process is so much more fulfilling because he starts from the raw materials and goes to the shoe, versus someone who's just making a shoelace, making like 40 or 50 shoelaces a day, and how demeaning that is to constantly be like a robot almost. And so I that part really resonated with me, because I think a lot of us are like on autopilot as like robots because we're not able to take things from like the start to finish. We don't see the whole process. We're just a small part of it.
Mm. Oh man, I don't want to say it.
That was deep, Ash. That was deep.
Yeah, I want, man, just the way I see just people exist, like the non-whites have definitely been, well, like the whites are definitely like living robots, have been robotized, and the non-whites and Negroes have been, well, I don't want to say it, but I have to say it because it's true, have been niggerized, been programmed to be really silly, stupid, and primitive. That's the programming they give us. That's what we're trained, and to contextualize that, I did not see any fucking Jews twerking during their genocide. So I had to say that. Yeah. So, or playing basketball during their genocide, or playing football. So I just had to throw that out there. We gotta really get serious, the collective, or find me something where the Jews were having a great time during their fucking genocide. All right.
So sorry, can you, if you want, you don't have to. I'm just I've been like heard a thought like that, so I'm trying to like,
Mhm.
what do you mean? Like, can you expand on that a little more? Like, do you think like, because I feel like so many of the, and maybe this isn't like an accident, but just like so many of the, you know, radical thoughts followed by consumer, just like, oh, like, you know, like when, and like this is stuff like I do believe in like art as resistance and like making joy and like stuff like that. So like people can just like be able to like get up every day, you know, but I am also aware that like maybe like things have like, it's like, just like as a way to, I don't know. Can you expand on that? Like numbing people, you know? I don't know if that's like what you kind of mean.
Oh, well, yeah, that's a good way to say it. We are, well, like a race that does not care that they're being genocided. I would say that's very like numbed, desensitized race because
desensitization.
Yeah, very desensitized. And that's what I mean. I didn't see any Jews twerking during their genocide. It's because I didn't, you know, when the Jews were being genocided, they fought back. And then when it was over, they said never again. Right.
And I also feel like we're distracted. Not only are we desensitized, we're distracted by these things, like you're saying, playing basketball, golf, twerking, whatever it is that all these material things that the European has told you is how you gain success, is what your happiness is found in, is the things that are the very things that are distracting us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wanted to add. Oh, you can go ahead, Mary.
I was going to chime off of what Celia had just said there. And so you're going pretty hard in terms of mentioning twerking during our genocide. That got me a couple of times. I had to hold my mouth. And I say that because it is a distraction. It's because not a lot of people are aware of that genocide is what's actually happening. They can like scheme it over with there's also wars. Yemen is suffering as well, but the underlying systematic genocide that's happening to us, so a lot of people are not aware of it. That's why when you bring up white supremacy, they're like, oh, we're not slaves anymore, but the mental slavery is the next one. So the forgive the twerkers, they're not aware they're slaves.
Yeah, I'm aware. I'm just aware of the situation. That's how I'm able to say why I say what I say. Yeah, Trey?
Yeah, I wanted to just chime in. Also, I think, what is my train of thought? But yeah, I do think like there are times where like dancing is like resistance, but it's like what's saying, I definitely see what you're saying, because even yesterday, like I like to go based on real experiences where I'm able to dissect and like look at racism, white supremacy manifesting before my eyes. I had a non-white and a white woman trying to convince me to dance with them to WAP. Like it's just I of course I didn't do it. There's no way I can do that. I told them it's not a reality that exists that I ever did this with you guys. It's impossible. And then like I just see them listening to the song and singing it, and they just love it so much. You just are eating up the song. It's like this is what this music is for. It's not for anything positive. It's just for this moment right here. This is not for Black people, by the way. It's just for these others, you know. But that's just my per se.
I don't know, like, I think that the whole, like, I think that is like an industry in and of itself of like making everything an act of resistance instead of actually doing like actual resistance work. It's like, I think everyone can just like be like, well, I did this, I got my nails done, and that was like self-care, so it's an act of like resistance or something. And like, that's really common language now. And I think it just like, a lot of people just don't want to like do the work and actually put themselves out there. And so there's a whole like I think there's a whole like activist industrial like system, like network of people, especially online, that like just kind of do, like, people will try to make WAP like something that's empowering, and it's like, why can't it be something that's not empowering, you know? And I think that it's important to like really understand that everything like those twerking videos are not just like for your people, like other people are commodifying off of it, like white people mostly are making money off of those things, and like they're using it to like further like oppress you because they're like you're watching it on their social media platforms that they're getting ad revenue on. You know what I mean? Like this is not like something that people are keeping insular to their communities. Like it's spreading to other people, and it projects a certain idea that I think it's like people like white people and stuff are going to want to see that because it just like, you know, is a validation of whatever they already think about Black people, that
Yeah.
they're just like dancing. Like, even though, you know, tap dancing is and stuff, like people say like you're tap dancing is actually like a really amazing, like, you know, form of dance. But it is like something that white people commodify that Black people do for them.
Yeah, I wanted to comment too. I kind of agree. I agree with what Swal is saying, you know, about Black people. To me, I feel like if Black people were more aware of the condition that they were in, we wouldn't see so many trying to become rappers or basketball players. And also, I feel like this is a kind of a strong statement, but it's proper. Like, I feel that it's, for me, a Black person kind of like twerking or being distracted like that is the same thing as like another Black person saying like white supremacy doesn't exist or institutionalized racism doesn't exist, because it's like they're both just unaware of what is going on around them. So that was just my little comment.
And it brings us full circle back to here, back to this book club, back to doing stuff that actually liberates you and is going to be beneficial to melanated beings.
Yeah. I wanted to piggyback up what Ezekiel said about like these distractions. I feel like I just see a lot of like men in my like age range, like basically being obsessed with shoes and like things that are just so not constructive. And there's like a whole network, a whole industry of like sneakerheads who are like who collect shoes and spend thousands of dollars on shoes, but have never once thought, am I being genocided today? Like, is something happening? Just had the ways that Black men and other non-white men go their way to like avoid being true to what's happening and understanding that they're under constant attack 24/7, 365 days a year. And they're being attacked by racism and supremacy. They're being attacked by a culture that wants to completely dominate and then eradicate them from planet Earth. So it's really important for us to have these conversations and to read these texts and to, you know, bestow this knowledge upon others, because this is a privilege and we do have access to computers and one more thing, so this draws back to the book. She said this kind of made me happy because it gave me hope. And I don't really believe in hope much, you know, but reading this gave me like a glimmer of something. When she talked about how Plato's wasn't even that popular, but he got enough people to basically agree with him, and then what he wanted to happen. He had the lower population, the 10% ruling the majority, and that's right now. And we don't even have to be popular. We just have to get enough people, you know, talking and speaking the same language, because and writing the same things basically, because that's what he did. He just got people on the same page, you know, and by reading it, we'll eventually all get on the same page and get, you know, a few million people to be on the same page with us. So.
Yeah, I want to read. This is on page 55. Maybe Celia will be able to teach us a little bit about comedic culture after I read this, because she may have some knowledge around that. This is on page 55. It's the ordinary consideration of the Egyptian symbol reduces it to a primary, arbitrary, utilitarian, and singular meaning, whereas in reality, it is a synthesis which requires great erudition for its analysis and a special culture for the esoteric knowledge that it implies. So I guess she's talking about the complexities of like MDW NTR, Kemetic, the Egyptian language. But I wasn't really able to. I don't understand that that's special. I know nothing about the special culture of MDWNTR. Maybe Celia, you'll be able to share some things if you can. No pressure.
Of course, of course. It's called, they're saying meta-netter, and meta-netter is basically just the hieroglyphs. It's just the symbols that are written all over the pyramids. They're in every pyramid in Egypt. Sometimes you'll see the same symbols repeated over and over again, and that's how you really know your ancestors wanted you to know something. And they're very complex in a way that I'm just going to use a popular symbol that a lot of you already have seen before to give you an example of the different meanings of it and just how layered the Kemetic language and information is. It's not only spiritual, but it talks about science. It talks about how to live in harmony with one another. And it also talks about how to live in harmony with the cosmos, with your planet Earth, but also everything else around you, Mars, Venus. It talks about astronomy, astrology, and all these things are tied into one because everything is connected. Like one of the ladies said, like time is like a circle. Everything is connected. Your journey is connected. You're going to see yourself again as a child. You're going to see your future self, and everything's happening right now. The past and the present is right now. And that's what they're teaching us. And so let me give you an example. The Ankh, let me show you guys really quickly so you guys all can know what I'm talking about. This symbol right here not only means eternal life, but the top portion at the top represents the womb. And this bottom portion, this long part here, represents the male genitalia. Very, very opposite of the cross, which is just straight up and down in a cross. There's no woman figure in it at all whatsoever. And that's just, those are two meanings right there. The cross and the meaning of eternal life and birth. And when they mean eternal life, some people think that, oh, they think they're gods. They think they're beyond the laws of the universe. No, you having a child, that's you reproducing yourself, just like how everything else on this planet reproduces itself. And this is why us getting to the genetics of this is very important, because even our ancestors knew this before there was writing, before there was language. They put all of this information in symbols. They knew exactly the circumference of the whole entire planet. They didn't have calculators. They didn't have telescopes. They were in tune with their environment. And so all of these things are a distraction to us. We need to be in tune with nature. And so if we go to Africa, there's a belief, a lot of Egyptologists believe that when you get into energy, you can just go into the pyramid and you'll get like a download, like a serious just download, and your ancestors will come through you and start working through you, and you'll start recalling information that you have no idea how you know, because it's in your DNA. So this is science, this is spirituality, this is environmental. It's so many levels to this. And so when you go back to Kemet, you're learning about life. You're learning about everything that there is to know in a way that is connected and not like broken all up in this European mind frame.
Oh, thank you for that. So I just want to just to contextualize everything that Celia just said. This is on page 56, and it goes. It's referring to meta-netter. Is that how you say it, Celia?
Yes, that's how you say it. Meta-netter. They don't use vowels.
Oh,
So
okay.
however you would like to pronounce it, it's probably more accurate if you think about it in that way. And this is why I have a lot of issues pronouncing words too, because once you get into this stuff, it's really hard with this English language. So that's why I'm really happy about this book, Yurugu, because she's giving us that Swahili language that we can reference to and use. That Asili, that word is very powerful. I get chills sometimes just saying it.
Yes, so, sorry, just before you start, I just wanted to contribute to that statement there about not using vowels. It's a very English thing to put the focus on the enunciation and the A-E-I-O-U. You'd find with Kemetic language, it's usually the consonants, because how you pronounce is how you pronounce. It's more so about the key words, so you understand what's being said. When I first came to that understanding, I really realized that the bastardization of English and that language, and how, but like I really understood how they use the English language to teach you how to enunciate and speak English as opposed to understand vocabulary and be able to use it. If we actually use the universal language of focusing on consonants as opposed to vowels, we would be able to communicate with so many different peoples and in different dialects as opposed to, sorry, I can't hear what you're saying. Because if somebody's sounding out toilet or toilet, you just pick up the TLT and you know what they're talking about. Whereas if you don't hear the full enunciation, which we've learned to do through in the English language, we literally will not pick it up. So I feel like that's just like a way to like just disconnect us universally. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is Dr. Marimba Ani. This is on page 56. She's talking about how meta netter is not something primitive, but something rather it represents a quite different view of reality, a mindset that sought to understand the universe as cosmos, therefore careful not to attempt the separation of spirit and mind, so that when we speak of the literate mode as championed by Plato, we mean to stress a unique definition and use of that mode, one devoid of the symbolic. So I think it's super important to understand that, our Africanness is one being in tune and touch with the cosmos, the universe, and the stars. And when white people started to try to get in tune with that, I think about Galileo and how like he's given so much acclaim for like figuring out like the stars and shit or whatnot. But I'm like, actually, the way he brought, the way I learned about fucking Galileo in school was so fucking boring. I would think, how am I learning about planets and I'm bored as hell? Like, when I was a kid, like this information seemed cool to me, and I wanted to learn about the planets. But now I'm learning that some white guy like discovered that these planets and whatnot. This is so boring, and it just allows me to understand that, oh wow, the European like literally takes everything and separates it and takes away the soul and spirit from it. Then it gives us to us, because that's what the European mind does. It sucks out the light from everything so it can control everything about it.
I wanted to, I definitely agree. Thank you so much to Mary and Celia. I literally have wrote in my like notebook, like, what is MBWNTR? I was like, what is this acronym? I thought it meant Egyptian hieroglyphics, but now I know it's like meta netter.
Just another
word. Like no vowels. I had no idea they existed. And that just shows my European programming, how I've been like just completely brainwashed, and then I've been played deeply by whiteness. This is my
another way to understand medu is that it means mother nature. Medu nature. Nature is nature, and medu could just take her on board as mother. So that's another way to understand it. It literally means is.
Yes, absolutely, Mary. Yes. I'm sorry, let me mute myself.
Yeah, and she further that says it reduced the complexities of experience to the written word, which is why
I have a question. Oh, shoot, my bad.
No, well, yeah, I'm just saying that like I was gonna say that we have a culture of where we worship written word where like a piece of paper could lead to you losing your children. A piece of paper could lead to you spending your life in prison. A piece of paper could lead to you being assassinated and killed. So this European reality that we've been forced to participate in is so, I would say, diabolical and devoid of not only everything that she says, but devoid of like basic humanity. Like we're not even like allowed to be humans, meaning to genuinely care about your fellow human.
I agree. I wanted to pose. I had a question about the text. Like I was reading this, and my mind could not process what this meant or what it's supposed to mean, because it's just so European. I'm getting introduced to a lot of European concepts, like, and I wrote down to myself, what is logically and eternally true or logically and eternally false? When I read that, I was like, what is this? Like, what? WTF am I? So if anyone wanted to like share knowledge and like, bring information, that would be greatly appreciated. Yeah.
So what's the question?
What is logically and eternally true or logically and eternally false? This is in a text. I could do like a word search if you want me to find it on what page. But she's just thinking about this. Yeah. Go.
Are you asking like our opinion about that statement?
Your opinion, or like what does it mean to you? But the main question is, what is logically and eternally true? Like, what does that even mean? Like, how could something be logically?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, what is this?
Yeah, I think from like just the book, kind of what she's going on and kind of saying in the book is like that. I guess logically you can't like decide that because logic doesn't make up everything. Like logic isn't the only way of thinking, and there are things that logic can explain. So I don't think that I guess like me answering your question or whatever is kind of like I don't know what is, because logically you can't think of something like that.
Yeah, and I think what she may be hinting at is that the European has devised a certain thinking pattern that they're able to control, like literal logic. Like they control like what is logical because they control how people think, and if you're able to control how people think, you're able to control their their um their perception. And so they taught us that killing is fun, and killing is fun entertainment. This is why we grow up watching rated R movies, why we grow up playing video games that kill each other, that kill people, because they have given us our perceptions, and killing is fun, and the logic behind why killing is fun because the bad guys have to die, and who are the bad guys? Mostly the people who are non-white. And I just think I could be wrong, could be missing the point, but that's my attempt at trying to answer the question.
So I think both of you guys' responses kind of were valid, and yeah, I don't think it's something that you can't really define something that is strictly imaginary and just untrue. Like when I read that, I was like, this is why so many people have a hard time assimilating into European culture because it's so contradictory. It's so contradictory. They tell you to be nice, but also, like Swat said, most of the mass media culture is violence.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to read it so we can understand how like limited the European psyche is. Therefore, how limited we have been made due to being forced to be European. So this is Eric Hall says it this way. In his striving for order, a Western man has created chaos. And Western just means white. Western man has created chaos by denying that part of the self that integrates while enshrining the part that fragment experience. Western man uses only a small fraction of his mental capabilities. There are many different and legitimate ways of thinking. We in the West value one of these ways above all, the one we call logic, a linear system that has been with us since Socrates. Western man sees his system of logic as synonymous with truth. For him, it is the only road to reality. So I think understanding this portion, we're able to like unpack the European psyche and their behavior a lot more. Yeah. Comments, questions, concerns?
Um,
What was that on page 57?
Yeah, 57 going to 58 at the bottom.
Yeah, I really like that part when she says that they cannot explain like Zen philosophy, African ontology, existential phenomenal reality, because like they'll try to do that, try to find a scientific or logical way to explain things that like are not explainable. Like she talks about how some things don't even have words to explain them. And so I thought that was like, I think what I like about this book is a lot of times she's really funny and takes a lot of digs at them, because it really is absurd to think that you can just try to apply logic to things that exist on a like spiritual dimension. But it's also just like that whole superiority complex that makes you think you can explain and know everything.
Yeah.
I wanted to
And a lot of the symbols in the metanetter, I'm sorry, can I just say this really quick, Trey? A lot of the symbols in the metanetter are exactly that, Ashley. There were things that couldn't really be explained. So they couldn't find the words for them. Even though they didn't have words, there were no words to be found. And so they had to put them in these symbols.
That makes perfect sense.
I really wanted to read something from the book that was gonna support what Small and Asha said. It's on page 57. And it goes back to like how important literature is and how important writing is and how important like speaking to other people is, because this is what is on page 57. Plato, however, had to argue for a supremacy, fighting the sophists, the powerful ancient mystery systems, ancient Kemetic Egyptian science, philosophy, religion, and other philosophical and ideological possibilities. He had to change the mental outlook of the culture. His task was to shape an atumawazu that would suit the utamaraho of those who would come to identify themselves as European. The psychological habits of the poetic or metopoetic mode had to be replaced by the illusions of the literate mode. By the time Solas is writing some 25 centuries later, these habits are so ingrained that Europeans are not even aware that logic that they are taught cannot explain Zen philosophy or African ontology or existential phenomenal reality. They are not aware of the fact that it is neither total nor universal. That's on page 57. If you want to give it like a smoother reading, not right now, but obviously if you want to check it out. To me, this is really important information, and it goes into depths how useless European logic is and how linear it is. It's just a quick summary of how combative it is and how it's sustaining racism, white supremacy. To me, this is all racism, white supremacy. Like Plato was a racist white supremacist. I feel like we. But any thoughts or responses to that? How did you feel when you guys read that part? I would love to hear people's thoughts.
Well, yeah, all of this is just validating to hear, and it's really important to understand, because just this part right here, the next page, 58, it was as Plato wanted it to be. The few decisions made for the many, the logical ones led those. The logical ones led those who could not reason well. So we still have these people in suits, controlling our lives. We still have this Platonic thinking very dominant in our society still, and we still have a bunch of cultures, I want to say, that debate, and they want to be they try to use this logic. We live in a very logic based society. Well, lots of people like to think, and maybe that's how they justify everything going around, because people constantly justify Black people dying, Black people being genocided. They constantly justify that by asking certain questions like, oh, well, what did he do? Or why didn't he obey? Or blah, blah, blah. But that's besides the point. Logic, we have to understand logic to be not logical. Logic is actually another form of insanity, when when speaking in the context of like the European Wazo, because their Wazo, their worldview is one that is, I would say, also insane. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. I think the European Wazo is insane.
Yeah, one of the authors, I don't remember if it was in this book, but they said that in order for white supremacy to exist, everybody would have to be insane for it to continue on.
That's really Fuller.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about, or I wanted to add to, I thought in the book it was very interesting to me when she was talking about how science wasn't universal or it wasn't total. I thought I kind of I mean I'm hoping that we can all like kind of unpack that a little bit more, because it was very hard for me to kind of understand a little bit, because science is science, you know. I know this is coming from like my European mindset, but when you think of science, you think of it to be factual. So it's very hard to discredit or to prove something like science or fact to be wrong. So I couldn't really understand kind of the angle she was coming at when she was saying that. So somebody can explain that, I'd like to leave that to the book club so we can all kind of elaborate.
So you want to give it a go?
Yeah, I just have like a little bit of an explanation for it, but you guys can dig in deeper. So when I was hearing you say that, my thought process went to controlled experiments, because the video that was sent in the chat earlier, where Dr. Francis was going at that white guy, he was basing all of his arguments off of science. And he was claiming that he wanted melanated people to self-sterilize. Basically, that's basically he was saying. All his claims were based off of science. So it depends on who's conducting the experiment, because you have to remember, if you get back to elementary school and we break down those very fundamental things that we know about science, having a hypothesis, doing an experiment, what are those controlled, how is the controlled environment? So you can prove almost anything to be true if you can control its environment. And that's what they're doing to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like science has always had a history of being very impartial, like eugenics and all these things are based on, they have always used science to justify like, racism, etc. And I also think like if you think about it, like if you think about quantum mechanics and stuff, it totally upends like every scientific like theory that you learn, because quantum mechanics literally is like nothing exists in like one space or one time. Like there's like all these principles that show that like, you can't tell how fast someone's going without knowing, and like not knowing where it is at the same time. Like we don't even, like light doesn't even exist as a particle. It's a particle and a wave and all these other things, which actually like makes so much more sense if we had like the way that Celia was talking about it, a more like type of hieroglyphics or like meta netter to talk about these things, because right now like we're trying to explain it and we don't have the words to explain it because it's so much more complex than we even think it is. And yeah, because when I learned quantum physics, like everything else that I learned before that was like just a theory based on if you're in these exact settings, right? Like in this exact type of temperature and exact type of whatever, like pressure. But like once you
the environment has to be controlled.
Yeah,
the environment has to be
once
controlled.
you change that, like there's so much like room for difference. I don't know, maybe Sarah can talk because she's like a super scientist.
I will just say in short that like, and I'm in some like leftist scientist circles, and there's a lot of talk about like the harm that comes from like the over morality and obsession of like, well, science says this, so it must be true. Like there are a lot of scientists who like the more you do science, the more you realize how so much of it can be obviously manipulated, arbitrary. If you get 10 experts in a room, they're all going to disagree. It's like, and this is just like, and I'm talking about like rocks. So obviously if you're talking about like sociology or people genetics, like people can really just twist stuff to be super fucked up and oppressive. But more so, it's also like, it's kind of like an interesting idea for me, at least, to be like, just because something is science, it's like, I don't know, just like, doesn't mean it's like the societal emphasis on like belief science like needs to also, I don't know, it's like, it's confusing because I'm like, climate change people, like, please pay attention, but also like in that same vein, is like very European and dismissive and like obsessed with like more what's it called? Like all that we talked about, like linear thought, blah blah blah, like very singular type thinking. And also like all, again, just like reiterate, like there's different types of science, like indigenous communities have done science forever, and like, but their science looks different, and it comes from like generations of knowledge and how to steward the land and stuff. It's not like, oh, I submitted a paper and I'm one person who came with this conclusion. It's like communal knowing. And so it's like, you know, I know that was a ramble, but those are just like lots of things to think about, basically. Thanks.
Yeah.
Also, Ashley, LOL, when I learned quantum physics, that just made me laugh. Because like casually, when I learned quantum physics, but also I was like, yeah, we'll save.
Yeah, I think we have to understand that scientists have that science has historically been used like to control like the reality of everyone.
Yeah, because I understand like, you know, the concept of, you know, kind of using, you can grab whatever statistics to kind of back your claim. Like I understand that concept, but when she was kind of talking about it and like that whole European, like this massive cultural thing, like it was, I don't know, it was like I've heard, you know, obviously like I'm aware of that concept, but it's like, damn, they were able to do that for the entire thing. You know, like,
yes, watch that video. Watch that video. That it's only like 20 minutes. Or
yeah, I did see that
video
video when she was talking to him. I honestly didn't know what the guy was claiming. They were calling him like another Hitler. That's what Hitler did.
Yep. But
I thought it was very confusing because the guy never actually like said what his research was. I don't know if anyone noticed that.
Because he was avoiding it, and she was kind of trying to make him say it, but he didn't want to be upfront. He's hiding behind his words, you know, that and he
charts,
yep.
Yeah, he just kept pulling out charts. And it's like, what do these charts mean? Like, what are you doing? Say what you're doing. You know, like she
just
clearly
like this
stated her
coronavirus
theory, you know? Yeah. She clearly stated her theory, but the guy just would refute, would not do it. And like you said, coronavirus is another one. Like they just use stats to prove something, but it's like that's not what's going on, really.
Not what's going on at all, because I got a cemetery that's right down the street from me, and I only seen 2 funerals all year.
Oh, geez. I want to read this on page 61, and it says, all objectives are not technological or scientific. There must be other times. Lineal time fails spiritually. It pushes us constantly towards anxiety and fear. The European is always asking himself and herself, even while he and she rest, where am I going? What will become of me? Lineal time is one-dimensional because it has neither death or breath, only the illusion of length. It leads to evolutionary theories. Reality is perceived as the continuous development of one entity through necessarily temporal stages. One stage is more evolutionary advanced than the one it follows, since they are arranged or unfold in a temporal sequence. So this talk like she's this is one of her she's starting to break down like time, and also at the same time I think science definitely is used to like help the European deal with their anxiety and fear, because they have taken science and placed it up on such like a pedestal where like we have like famous characters now in the entertainment area, people activity that like are like, you know, Rick and Morty, who's like the embodiment of like science being God and science being like the truth. You know, science is power. Literally, Rick and Morty is like you're telling us that science is power and science like is God level understanding, because if you understand science, you're able to be some kind of God, which is false. It's not true. Um, but yeah, I think this is a good passage because we all are aware that the European is literally like never satisfied. It's always like, what's next? What are we going to conquer next? What are we going to do next? You know, what's next? How are we going to keep this progress going? And I think some of us may have developed those traits as well, like not being satisfied with where we are in life, always thinking that we need more, always thinking that we need to like, you know, go on some kind of adventure. So yeah, I'm done. I'm done.
Well, I wanted to kind of add because Trey was kind of talking about that earlier, the anxiety and the fear we were talking about a few moments earlier. But I definitely, when she was talking about this, you know, and just that whole concept of time and the anxiety and fear, I think I can speak for all of us when like we've definitely just thought about dying, you know, just death. I don't think about that too often anymore. I'm not saying like, oh, suicidal or anything, but you know, you just think about like what happens after death, you know. And I never would have thought like it's just the whole concept of time, like being oppressive and nature that and causing that anxiety and fear that causes us to think about things like that and just kind of always like be afraid. You know, I truly want to believe like that, you know, after death, you know, when your time's up, like something happens, you know, but I don't know what it is. And I think that idea of like not knowing what happens is very like is what causes that anxiety and fear. I guess that's has a lot to do with time.
I feel like I'm about to start a discussion among us because I'm going to read this part again. It leads to evolutionary theories. I'm not fucking convinced myself or my brothers and sisters came evolved from fucking monkeys, bro. I don't believe that evolutionary theory. You know,
Hell no.
I have a better idea. I have a better. I feel more inclined to believe that we did not come from evolving from monkeys. That we came from being created by some kind of divine creator force type being. Maybe the Neanderthals evolved from monkeys, whatnot, but like this passage is giving me a reason to further not believe in evolution. But thoughts on evolution, guys? Do you guys believe that?
I wanna jump in here because like because of school traumatized me so much. I have so many memories from school, and I remember sitting down and learning about like survival of the fittest and like the evolutionary theory and how like they're showing me images of like a white like man, like a monkey going from like a monkey to like a white man, and I was like, oh, this makes sense for like white people because white people have like white skin, and like if you shave a monkey, the skin is gonna be white. You have similar lips, really thin lips, like and monkeys and the gorillas have really thin lips. So when I was told that I evolved from like an animal, I just didn't believe it. I couldn't believe that I actually evolved from any type of ape. You know, it just didn't make any logical sense to myself, and I never believed it. I didn't believe it in elementary. I didn't believe it in middle school. I didn't believe it in high school. I never believed it. You know, but I did believe that dinosaurs were real. But I didn't believe that I evolved from so primate. It just seemed impossible. You know, my mind could not receive that download. You know, but I did understand there was a strong like wantingness to associate like black people with monkeys. I remember like that being a thing. Like you know, people like telling other people you should go eat a banana, you monkey. You know, like watching movies and then seeing like the Italian films where they're like call black people monkeys and kill them a banana after they kill them and shit. You know, just all this fucked up racism, white supremacy. But yeah.
I want to chime on to that as well. I remember in psychology, during my psychology degree, my sociology teacher, she literally said that it is the grown consensus, because at that point they're not going to teach us that we come from monkeys, but she said it's the grown consensus that Europeans believe that black people derive from monkeys. And I was like, that can't be true today. And she was like, yeah, this study was done in 2016. And she said it with like the biggest grin on her face, like, yep, this is what they believe about you. Yep. And I was just like, wow. But then I do understand the rhetoric is necessary there for scientific racism to continue to prove that we are 3/4 of a human being, and it's slowly dying. But what I did notice about understanding Neanderthals and understanding genetics and DNA, if you look at the hairs on a primate or a monkey, they're extremely fur-like. I don't know anybody of African ancestry that has any kind of fur-like, or like, if that was the case, wouldn't monkeys have coiled hair? Where's the any form of resemblance? Like, where's the lip?
Also, monkeys also have straight hair. You know, I remember like going home and looking at this.
They have dog hair. It's straight up dog hair.
Like just going home and really, analyzing and trying to figure out why was this something that my teacher was trying to convince me. And so thank God that I was not that penetrable, because it could have been really bad. But yeah, I love what Mary was saying about the hair. Like, I've never seen a primate with locks in my entire life.
Yo, if I see a monkey with dreads, that'll be the day, yo. Seriously.
All right. Anyone want to share in? We have one believer in evolution, which is fine, and I see some non-believers in evolution.
I mean, I'll just give my 2 cents. I think Black people were definitely like just meant to be humans. I don't think we evolved from anything. I definitely think that white people, the only way they could make it out of those mountains was messing with those Neanderthals. So I don't know. I don't know what it was, what they were. I mean, we all know what they were doing, but
sleeping with the dogs.
Exactly.
But, the wolves.
Yeah, I also found it very like contradictory, and like it almost makes no sense, because the Bible is like a European book and it doesn't mention anything about evolving, but at the same time European science is telling them that they evolved. So I don't like that was very contradictory and very confusing as a child.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to also bring that point up.
Yeah, like I think I don't know. I think I've read enough information for me to personally understand that this is probably what happened. Like albino mutants went up to Europe, saw the Neanderthals, and we're like, oh shit, we can use these people. We could like mate with these people. We could rape these people, and we could eat them because we need to survive. It's too cold out here. We can't form a community, so we have to the Neanderthals were like the first victims of
genocide.
Exactly, genocide. The first victims of the first true victims of white violence was the white people, because in the prehistoric history, when white people were just leaving Africa and going to live in the Caucasus Mountains and all those ice mountains, they didn't have a sense of community. So therefore they were like bashing each other's heads in with like blunt objects, raping each other to prove who was dominant. Okay, you trying to come over to where I live and where my area, I'm gonna rape you so not to ever come back over here. This is like their behavior, and maybe they learned that behavior from being amongst like the animals. It's very possible.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Well said.
I want to hear Sarah. She has to defend her case.
Okay, Sarah, what propels you to an evolution?
Well,
don't be scared.
I will say this. Thank you. I will say that obviously, like, I do not prescribe to I'm like aware of the super racist ideology that people have been describing, obviously, of associating Black folks with it was that is obvious. I do not believe in that. It's just what makes the most sense to me. yeah, I don't, so
That's
has a
fine.
feeling. I got a feeling. It's what I believe. But and it's what it makes sense to me, and yeah.
Yeah.
Don't let me take up too much space, but that's just me.
You're entitled to that. That's how you
We
feel.
can change your mind. We can change your mind. That's why she's
Exactly.
here. She
That's
knows
exactly
she got
what I'm
enough
saying.
sense. Ezekiel, she got enough sense because she here. So I ain't worried about it. She's still on our team.
Yeah, I concur to that. Yeah, Trey, say something.
Oh, sorry.
No, so there you can go.
Oh, I was just going to say that Ashley's point about quantum physics, when I was talking about science and just the spiritual aspect of the metanetter, that's what they're talking about. Their science is actually quantum physics, not this hypotenuse experiment controlled. You get a group of people, not the science, the white science that we know, but they go down and they break it down, because a lot of the things that they've obtained as far as like math and just what they know about the universe and the planets and the star alignments, all derived from that same observation and the analysis of quantum physics. That's their science.
I wanted to share something. Oh, you can go ahead, Ezekiel, if you're responding.
Oh no, I wanted to share something. You go ahead. You beat me to it.
Okay. So on page 58, it says, only a tiny fraction, this is like the top first paragraph, only a tiny fraction of the Greek populace followed, had access to, i.e. was literate and privileged, or was convinced of this new epistemology, and its accessibility was to remain restricted for many centuries to come. But what makes it so important is that those few who did have access and who were convinced were also those who set the intellectual and ideological patterns for the civilization that would follow. Hold on, I'm echoing just a second. Yeah, I just thought that that was like a really powerful section because it totally mirrors now. And there's only a small group of people who really hold like a lot of the knowledge. It makes me wonder, like, in what rooms are people reading texts that we don't even have like access to or are even trying to read and understand. And those are the people who are like, you know, framing how our societies are going to be run in the future. Like those, like the white supremacist capitalists are the ones who are really like, you know, setting up the world that we live in. And I think that the masses don't have, I mean, even now we have accessibility to these things because you can pretty much find a PDF of like everything, but it's still like we're not doing the work to like really read it and learn it. And I just really like that line because it shows how people can really control a society if everyone is just kind of blindly following. I don't know what anyone else thinks.
I just wanted to comment on what Ashley said. I liked how the author, she really like shows you how, you know, this society that and this culture and civilization we're currently living in was like created. And I like how she's really exposing that and putting a lot of it in the context. And that was Ashley, the part Ashley read is just another indicator of that.
I wanted to read this bit. It's on the same page, and it kind of like hammer in what Ezekiel and Ash had said. And let me start right. Okay. Europeans are discovering what other cultures have always known. Verbal linear logic is only one aspect of our consciousness, one part of our cognitive apparatus. As humans, we have other tools that are global and intuitive, but within European culture, these have almost been put out of commission, made inoperable, deformed by a civilization whose etymology ignored them and considered them almost inhuman. certainly uncivilized, deficient in the inability to grasp cosmic reality, organic interrelationships, Europeans were deprived of the source of a different kind of power, which comes from joining. They turned, therefore, to the forms of intellectual manipulation, which seemed to yield power over others, the nature of the Asili. And when I read this, I was like, thank the Lord for just existing, and just it's just really important information, and it completely like recenters my like thought process, understanding that I have inherited a European thought process, and I need to continuously work in myself to like make sure the thoughts I'm having are like the closest to my actual spirit, because even Plato himself said the soul was inferior, and it's just really unfortunate that a lot of people are unaware that their way of thinking has been given to them. The way they have to process things has been given to them, which is not sustainable, not productive, and the way that we should be thinking is like considered deformed and savagery. And when I was reading this, it made me think of what was it? I can't remember right now, but if I remember, I'll say it.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to go off of what Trey was saying. Yeah, so that's a lot of times when I'm reading the book, because I have been raised, with this kind of mindset and culture, I see a lot of the things she's talking about in myself, where she was talking about on page 58, to continue. I hope no one read this, where it says, as humans, we have other tools that are global and intuitive, but within European culture, these have almost been put out of commission, made inoperable, deformed by a civilization whose epistemology ignored them and considered them almost inhuman, certainly uncivilized. Deficient in the ability to grasp cosmic reality, organic interrelationship, Europeans were deprived of the source of a different kind of power, which comes from joining. They turned therefore to those forms of intellectual manipulation, which seem to yield power over others, the nature of the Asili. So when I, reading that, I kind of felt like a different kind of like set of emotions, because I was like, it's sad because I'm a victim of this, and I've been cut off from that kind of power,
Yeah,
and at the same time, it kind of gives you hope, because at least now that there are those other tools. We just kind of have to find them, and those will take us further, with being where we need to be.
Yeah, like
so.
Yeah,
I remember what I had said. I remember what I had thought when I was reading that, and it's directly related to like the text being able to evoke it out of me. Is that we have like a pineal glands that they're intentionally trying to calcify, and like the food. So like to me, when I read this, I was like, is that why you're trying to like close my like third eye, my pineal gland, because of the access to this type of information and me being so connected to the cosmos, like my right to be connected to the cosmos as a like non-living being. So I was thinking, this way it really made me think of that. I don't think it was a coincidence. I think it's just data working with new data.
Yeah, I think it's very important to understand that all melanated people have access to the source. I don't know if the European doesn't have the same access, but due to the Europeans' like behavior throughout history, they have severed their access to God or the source or universal knowledge, energy, and power. That is not at the on like that does not come from like suffering of others. That comes from like a source of pureness, I would say. And it's the part that Trey and Ezekiel read is very, very fucking important for us to understand that this European, like, Astili is one that is like disconnected af, like super disconnected. That's why no culture has been able to like, survive the European encounter because there's no joining. we destroy or we make you European. Destroy you or we make you European. You know, that's the only options we have because our Tama Rojo is one of destruction and control, and our Tama Wazo is going to allow us to justify that and think we're doing the right thing and like destroying and conquering you guys. So
yeah, which I just wanted to add to what Trey was saying about the pineal gland. That's just one of the ways that they are attacking us. One of the ways that they calcify our pineal glands is through the water, through the food that we eat, through, you know, all areas of people activity, but it's really what we put into our mouths that's really affecting our pineal. Meat, you know, eating meat is fluoride. Yeah, I just seen that, fluoride. Yes. So it's what we put into our mouths that we need to start being really conscious of and moving forward, being aware of. Me myself, like I said, this is all a journey for us. So reading this material, it like it's deep, it's levels to it, it's levels to this shit.
Yeah. And I don't know if anyone can answer Noel's questions. I do not have that knowledge, but if anyone,
I'm writing something now.
and also, when I read this is on page 65. It says European culture glorifies the ego in the context of individualism, while African culture minimizes the ego for the sake of a sense of oneness and group identity. Europeans, therefore, constantly attempt to demonstrate independent from the forces of nature and are reluctant to acknowledge the fact that they, along with everything else in the universe, has been caused, while for Africans, everything in the universe is related, is dependent, and caused, including themselves. They believe that things happen because they do. Okay, so I guess what she's trying to get at, allow us to understand is that the European ego is not something that Africans have to fucking worry about. We weren't like trying to like, you know, show off. Neely Fuller says one of Black people's biggest problems, something that we need to stop doing is showing off, because a person is showing off whenever like they like get some new trinket given to them by the white supremacy. Like when they want to show off the new car, they'll drive around the town, the neighborhood with no like constructive like direction. They're just wanting to show off. People who like buy a lot of jewelry want to show off. People who buy fancy clothes. Like we do a lot of showing off as a people, and that's the European ego. And maybe it's also from the constantly being brainwashed and seeing our heroes are like, you know, usually just one person. It's not like a collective group. Our favorite people are just people who are doing individuals who do great things. Mostly these things are can't happen in real life because we see these heroes and find these heroes on the TV screen. So any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the part I just read? Yeah, especially through fucking social media.
I feel like I feel like there's a time and a place to show off. And right now we're at war, because if you think about Kemet, because you know that's my thing, I always go back to Kemet. The kings and the queens, you know, they had their gold, their silver. You know, they were stylish. You know, we was fly. We wasn't walking around here looking crazy. So you know, our head rests were very beautiful. Our clothing, you know, but we weren't at war during that time. And so there's a time and a place to be showing off and celebrating. And right now, our people are not in a state for any of that.
Yeah, I totally agree. We are not in a state to celebrate much or to be showing off, because we have nothing to show off until we end the system of racism and white supremacy. Comments?
Well, I agree. Well, with Swat has said, but Salil has said. I did go on page 58 still. I mean 59. I did have something that I wanted to read since it's on my iPad. And it's just, to me, I keep hearing this term progress. We made so much progress, made so towards progress. But whenever I like hear people talk, and so it's funny how most people don't want to talk about racism, how it really should be spoken about. But a lot of people love talking about like race problems and racism and what it just nonsense basically. And I hear progress a lot, and to me this right here is what progress kind of really is, which is on page 59. It was one of the many manifestations of progress. It is this idea of progress rests on the assumed reality of the line. All things are reduced to sequential relationship on a line, one-dimensional and unidirectional. This timeline joins the points of past, present, and future, where the function of the past and present is to give value to the future by virtue of individualist comparison. And then the future is used as a standard by which to evaluate the value of the present and the past. The future reigns supreme. Any form of cultural behavior is justified in the pursuit of this never attainable future, and any culture whose inamawazo does not allow for the abstract yet oppressive future of the progress ideology is thought to be doomed to failure. When I read this, I just immediately thought about how people use the term progress to like kind of stop immediately talking about racism. It's like the get out card of racism. I don't want to talk about this anymore. We made progress. And to me, it just means nothing, because if progress is looking back at the past and saying, look, at least you're not being hung from a tree in public, I'm like, that's not really applicable to my situation, because I am still being murdered. Like, take away how I'm being murdered, I am just being murdered. And now you can watch it on Snapchat. So I think it's a lot worse. It's a lot more like desensitized. So no one's doing what they need to be doing in response to war and warfare and genocide. Because racism and supremacy is warfare against Black people and all non-white people, and it is also genocide against Black people. Native Americans have definitely almost already have been genocided, and they've been given casinos to say, hey, look, your casinos, you can press some money in the machine and pull the hatch and make some money, but most of your people are like non-existent. And I do want to ask a question to the melanated people in this room. Have you guys ever met a Native American? Have you guys ever became friends with a Native American? Do you know anyone's Native American, a full blood who knows their history? Because I know I don't. I'm from California and I don't know any. And I think that's a really and as a kid I would think about that too, because I watched a lot of film for Native people, and I've never actually seen one in real life, or I had a conversation with one in real life. And I think that's kind of insane.
Yeah, I've met a lot of white people wanting to say they're Native Americans, but I've never met a true red man ever.
My therapist was Native American. She was, I don't know. She was full-blooded. She was like the same color as me, almost, like very dark.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I've met somebody in the UK who's Jamaican, and they did their ancestry and found out that they were pretty much half Native American, and they appeared just as melanated as I am. So I found that interesting.
Yeah, I've never met a Native American, and I went to school in San Bernardino, and I think it's supposed to be near like a Indian reservation.
Was one of the people who responded? Like, anyone else want to answer the question?
I think
Ezekiel's talking.
They appear to be white. That means that they've been their bloodline has been raped and infiltrated, so they're not what the question. The question I'm asking: have you ever seen like a full-blooded Native American?
But Ezekiel was talking.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I haven't. I've never seen one. I went to school and pretty much lived there for like 4 years, near Indian reservations. I think San Bernardino is very well known for its Indian reservations as well, but I still have never actually met one or become friends with one. I think I have seen one, but all the ones I've seen haven't been like close to my complexion at all. Not at all, but you know, I would describe them more as yellow, if anything.
I think that's genocide.
Yeah, I think the Native Americans have been successfully genocided because we look at this country. They're not in any where are the Native Americans? Well, like Noella said, on the reserves, and she said most of them appear to be white. So a lot of them may even be the $5 Indians. So which if you don't know that term, the $5 Indian is like when the Indians were getting their like so-called reparations. White people were able to pay to be classified as an Indian and also get some of the benefits that the Native Americans were gaining. So a lot of white people were paying $5 to be classified as Native Americans to receive like land and whatnot. And the ones who couldn't do that would just marry into a Native American family and just kill the natives at the right time, or just wait till the natives to die, or just bamboozle the natives and just marry them, take their land, and like do some fucked up shit. So the natives, like Dr. Francis Christ Wilson has said, Native Americans have been genocided. It's possible for Black people to be genocided. So, yeah.
I have a little comment. I'm from Michigan. I'm from Detroit, which is like across the street from Canada. So I have met some Native American people, but knowing Detroit, it's a French settlement. So I'm pretty sure that they're not completely full-blooded natives. They might be mixed with French. But to answer your question, no, I have not met a full-blooded Native American, but I haven't really delved into their history. So they could be telling me one thing, when they could be something totally different. So IDK.
You said French. I was just like, how can you be native but also French? You know?
That's why I said IDK.
Yeah, it's confusing.
I just want to reiterate what Swa said. Like the $5 Indian is a real thing that happened where white people were paying $5 to identify as Native American, and they were receiving benefits in the form of land, in the form of like money, and they were able to profit off commodifying Native American identity. And that tradition is definitely very much alive. So a lot of people who I have met that say they were a Native American were all white, and none of them were actually Native because it's impossible to be Native American if you are lacking, if you have deficient levels of melanin. It just doesn't make sense and does not compute. So yeah, I think the people that Noel had mentioned and the Chaina had mentioned are they could be native in some sense in their own by their own definitions, but not from the question I posed. You know, I don't think any of them meet the standards. Besides, 1% of the responses from Ash, she said she met someone who was just as close to her complexion. And I think that person could possibly be Native American.
Yeah, she told me she was full-blooded. She thought it was my therapist. So.
Yeah. If we can go back to kind of what Trey was saying about progress, I just wanted to talk about that a little bit more. What he was saying earlier, you know, people kind of do use that term as a benchmark, and what he did read. Actually, sorry, let me go ahead and read this part. She goes on to say that progress is the meaningful sequence where we can see a developmental line. The trobriander sees a point at most a swelling in value. Europeans take pleasure and get satisfaction in moving away from a given point. The trobriander finds it in the repetition of the known and maintaining the point that is in what we call monotony. So I don't know what some of those words mean, but from that I took that, you know, even though people are seeing progress, the progress, especially against like racism in this country, as like you were saying, we're not being hung up on trees anymore, and they're counting that as progress, but there's still millions of people dying every year as a direct result of racism, and just kind of how this idea of progress in European culture, like how Europeans just love it. You know, we're not at the same point we were at yesterday, but you know, we're doing better today, aren't we? You know, kind of stuff like that. So yeah, I thought that was meaningful. I thought that was very interesting. And I also think it's also an idea that kind of plagues, I feel like the older generation of us, because especially a lot of adults now are just like, you know, well, things are getting better. They're a lot better. At least you weren't, you know, they're the ones kind of reiterating and perpetuating this stuff, which is very sad to see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I wanted to.
Yeah, I wanted to add on to that was on page 63. He says, ironically, it says European conception of the future creates more serious problems for the members of the culture than it can possibly resolve. Ironically, it is this future approached by the ever-present line of time through which the European seeks fulfillment, but at the same time assures her/him of never being fulfilled. The future in this conception represents unattainable perfection. It is an abstraction that is unreachable and therefore is unknowable. And when I read that, the first thought I had was MLK's speech and why white people love that speech so much, because it's like the unattainable and like perfect future that they know will never happen, but like they can keep like having this fake future to like dangle in front of people with this speech that they always like tell kids all the time, like I have a dream that one day Black and white kids will be playing together or something. And I just thought it was really interesting that so much of our media and stuff is like this masturbatory look at the future in a way to like say like we're getting even better and better and better. And it's like, where are all those ships and whatever things flying? Where are they coming from? They're like, where are all these like holograms coming from? They're coming from chips that are mined in countries that are like, people are getting cancer mining those things. Like maybe we need to stop thinking about this unattainable future. Like it's not beneficial to us.
Yeah. I wanted to just piggyback off what Ezekiel and Ash said about like basically when I read that part, I'm thinking it appears that Europeans and the European thought process will have you running away from things and living in fear of things. Like you're constantly trying to get away from something to get from something. And it's like it's very circular in a way how it creates your own suffering. And it's all related to time and points. And it's when you think about how this society is ran, it really is about, you know, it's a race. Like who's gonna get to point A to point B faster. Which race is doing the best, you know?
The space race.
Yeah, every white person will say, "Oh, race is not the." I don't think my race is like, you don't have to, because the way you're programmed, you are thinking about it subconsciously nonstop. Yeah. You know, nonstop. It's on your mind nonstop. You know.
And maybe a lot of reasons why white people don't think about race is because their race is already in the front of this so-called of the human race. You know, they already like have a 500-year head start in this race, and like this progress thing, the future is not something that the European can even like fathom, because I feel like if Africans had control, if Africans had power, we'd be like, okay, our future is we're gonna have zero fucking pollution, we're gonna have zero death, we're gonna have zero violence by 2025. That's what we're gonna do for our future. But the European is not able to make commitments like that or to say things like that, because the way it controls society is in a very like point A to point B type of way, which doesn't really maybe leave time for them to like I don't know, critically think about what they're calling progress instead of using progress to get away from the current and the past. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I just said a lot of nothing just now.
Their definition for progress is really control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everything they're progressing towards, everything that they're progressing towards, if you just look at our environment now, it's towards control. Coronavirus, chip, the solution to that, more control. 9/11, solution to that, more control.
Yeah.
Anything that happens that they make happen is to further their agenda of control, whether that be your mind, your genitalia, it's everything is about control.
Yeah.
Mary?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, I did want to contribute to everything that's just been said. From on the same page on 63, it says participants in the culture have only one resource against fear, science. The purchasing of insurance is another attempt to escape fear. I could read on, but I don't want to make a statement there. Like literally fear, like what you just said, is the control mechanism. When they've commodified our fear. The coronavirus happening in the way that all of us being afraid of death is the only reason why they can control us and keep us indoors, because we don't want to die. Like literally controlling the narrative on your life and fear is the main mechanisms of that, how capitalism works in the society. Fear of loneliness, so socially you want to wear things that are socially acceptable. Fear of death, so you make sure you have all the medications that they've said is necessary for the flu jab, all these things that are not contributing to your health, but rather than taking health into our own hands, we give it to them because they're wearing a white jacket and they've stated it. So yeah, I just wanted to make a mention of that. I found that very powerful in the chapter.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I also marked that part down, and it was one of those things that I was like, okay, if insurance is a thing that is a powerful source in a racism and supremacy structure, then so are laws. And then I was like, I wonder what would happen if someone attempted to put a law in the books that made racism and supremacy illegal. And it was illegal to actually be racist. Not do hate crimes. I'm talking about to like be racist. I'm like, that's something that would never ever be written into law because it's in the silly to be racist, and it's like manifested through the mawazo, and then it's carried throughout the heart, and then it's just practice. So I was like, this is we are in a bind as a collective. Bind.
Yeah.
This is something I've been saying for a while. Why can't we get white supremacy or racist acts to be seen as a mental health disorder where they can get locked up for a period of time and then have to basically break that part of their mindset and disease? That would mean they'd have to admit that it's a mental health problem, even though
it's hard to prove. The problem is it's hard to prove.
Well, I mean, we have like a definition of it, but that's not going to be the definition that any doctor or anyone who's in the psychiatric world is going to like use. Like, they're not going to use Dr. Welsing's definition of racism or white supremacy, and they're going to come up with some other definition where you have to be a part of the KKK or a Proud Boy, which is what they're doing now, which is when they're telling Trump to tell white supremacists to stand back. It's like, this is all white supremacy. The debate is white supremacy. Like, and when you try to like kind of define it in other terms, you can't pick and choose who gets that help for that, because it would just be all white people. Like,
it's like you have to eradicate the whole system, because it's kind of like it's almost like working within the system, like by creating laws, but the laws in the first place are racist white supremacist laws. So it's a double-edged sword.
Yeep. Also, the 9 areas of people activity, which is education, economics, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, counter war. So each of those 9 areas of people activity needs to be like targeted by a counter racist. We need a counter racist making movies that's, teaching people to counter racism and white supremacy and promoting images of Black self-respect. We need someone in the economic area, people activity, teaching Black people how to be smart with their time and energy and their resources. We need someone in politics. This is where this group comes in. Politics, people relations, you know, rebuilding the Black collective and just rebuilding like the ability to communicate with other fellow human beings. Religion, we need someone targeting like the religion. All of us honestly need to be targeting religion because it's so fucking like detrimental to Black people and non-white people. You literally like practicing Christianity or Catholicism is literally promoting Black and genocide. That's what that whole religion means. And yeah, you would just have like Trey, what Trey said, we are in a bind, but we know like what we need to target and we like can't come up with solutions. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask, that was a great example in the book where they mention the purchases of insurance is another attempt to escape fear. Can anybody else think of different ways in which that we've been like fear, other than medical, that we've been fear indoctrinated into purchasing?
Calling the police, like for anything.
Yeah, I don't receive any of my tax money. That needs to stop now.
Our care products, like just basic stuff that we need, like soap and, you know, shampoos and perfumes and stuff like that.
Mary, could you repeat your question?
Thank you.
What are other, like, can you think of any other fear-based purchasing that we do, like insurance, like injecting fear into the main society so we purchase things in the wider society?
I can only really think of food right now. I think there's like, you know, it's interesting. I don't think it's off topic, but you know, since my siblings aren't in school right now, they have the school gives them their lunch and my mom brings it home. She keeps it in the freezer. And I'm very like health conscious. I really hate like fake food and stuff like that. So I am basically going like on a binge and I'm throwing all of it out of the house. You know, they want to keep it in the house though. And I was telling my dad, like, you know, we need to get rid of this stuff. We can't have this kind of poison in the house. And he's saying, oh, you know, your mom keeps it so she can give it to her coworkers' kids. Like some of the kids might need it. And I'm like, even if those kids are hungry, personally, me, I wouldn't give them that food. Like, I feel like that's a lot more problematic going down the road. I can't really remember how that was relevant. If somebody could help me, but it was just like I'm trying to get rid of this poison, this food, and you're trying to give it to other people so it can poison them because you think it's a good thing that they have food to eat. So
yeah, I'm trying to answer Mary's question as well, but I think maybe sports could be a good example, like when white people see like someone who's actually white winning sports, that helps them deal with their like fear of being genetically inferior. You know, I think when they see like a white MMA fighter actually beating a Black fighter, that gives them like hope and diminishes some of their fear, because okay, they're like, okay, oh, we actually aren't that weak. See, we could beat up some of the Blacks, you know, we could take some of the Blacks. So I think that may answer your question a little bit.
For me, I like do a lot of housing work. So I just think like paying your rent is fear, because like if you don't pay it, then there's that big looming threat of like, you know, just sleeping on the streets or being homeless. And they put homeless people there on purpose to like make you keep going to work, make you keep like, you know, like living in white supremacy so you don't end up like that. Like it's like a threat or something. And like, so for me, like, you know, I've always just thought like, why don't people just go into a house and just say, this is my house now? And people do that, you know, and it's been happening. It happens in LA. And And I know,
Squatters.
I know people who did it in Hawthorne. They just went to a house, called, and got the utilities turned on.
Yeah, they're called
People who owned
squatters.
it, yeah, but I mean, well, I mean, it's supposed to be called reclaiming, right? Like, because I think squatting, that has like a negative connotation, but really it's like, who really has, like Swal was saying earlier, it's just paper. Like, who owns this property? Like, back in the day, white people were literally burning like their leases and rent receipts and stuff because they were like, this isn't real. And then they would just take over a house. And I think that like people really are so afraid that we pay our rents even when we don't have money. People go into debt to pay to like live in four walls. And it just shows how like cruel our society is and how fear-based everything is.
Yeah, that's a great example, Ash.
Yeah, it is.
I think where I was going with my example was just what's happening right now with the coronavirus, how everybody bought all the paper towels, bought all the hand sanitizer, bought all the soap. I was like, dang.
I don't know if everybody's done answering Mary's question. I don't want to backtrack too much, but on page 61, she used the term a lifeless time. I wanted to better understand that. On page 61, it was the quote. Says, lifeless time, can be split and chopped up at will, something that cannot be done with lifetime or with organisms living in it. Seeds, blossoms, plants, animals, men, organic thoughts. This is why technology works with fragments of time and employs time study experts, men who watch over the rational exploitation of lifeless time. All these are methods which subject live organisms partaking of vital time to a mechanical lifeless time. So yeah, I didn't understand lifeless time. She said lifeless time, and there was another term she used. I think it was dead time.
So I just the way I understood it is like, oh whoa, they're taking time and they're using it as like a blanket for everything, because science will the way the scientific method can only work is that if we apply European time to it, because first, the way that you did scientific method is even like set up is that it's set up in like, I think 4 steps. First you do this, then you do that, and then you do this, and then it's the conclusion, right? The conclusion is the end of your scientific experiment. It's all based in like time. A seed is gonna grow no matter what. It's not growing because of time. It's growing because that is what it does in its life. It's a part of like its life. But the European has applied time to everything. Therefore, separating its natureness, its freeness, it's something being pre-time to something that is always contextualized within time. Because instead of saying seeds grow, we say seeds grow in like 3 to 6 months. Instead of saying that. That's my attempt to answer the question. Anyone else want to give it a shot?
Yeah, comparing it to nature was really defining, and I like how thank you for saying that. It's called the scientific method. I can't remember it. Some of these European things, as I learn more stuff about African culture, it just kind of like I have to dig it up somewhere. But yeah, it's called the scientific method, and yeah, that was really divine how you compared it to food, because yes, and how things need to happen naturally. Like things are supposed to happen naturally.
All right, well, I think I definitely understand that term a little bit better now, so we can move on from that.
Hey everyone, I want to thank you for your time and your knowledge, but I'm gonna have to head out. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Shan. Take care.
Thank you
Bye,
too.
Shayna.
See you soon.
Bye. See you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye bye.
One of the last things I have I have in my notes that I was planning on discussing was on page 69. And it goes but the facility of European development allows us to understand that these ideological developments as preparation for putting in place the powerful monolithic state culture that has become Europe. So Europe is like, wow.
She's just kind of talking about the framework, right? Like she's kind of like, this is like the framework for what's to come.
Yeah, this is the foundation of Europe. This is literally how Europe was able to become one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful empire on the planet right now, still to this day.
Yeah, and I think I like that part too, because I think it ties in a lot with like time. I always think of time in terms of like work and how you really have to be monolithic. Everyone has to get there at a certain time. You can't, like, I don't know, has anyone ever cried at work? Like you can't even be yourself at work. Like everyone has to be the same. Everyone has to respond to things the same. Everyone has to, like, and it creates a world where, that's why there's so much traffic at the same times every day. Like everyone is literally living this monolithic life, like robots. Like, and I think that it, like, and then it manifests globally, because even Ghana is like that, you know. It's not just in the Europe anymore, it's everywhere where people are like a monolith. Like, I don't know, back in the day, like I remember just like there's a thing where like my mom gets a lot of work done in Ghana, and she always complains about how Ghanaian people just do things whenever they want, and they're never like as like strict on time like Americans are. And like this book makes me appreciate that so much more, about how like they work when they want to work, because she'll always complain about that. But it's actually like a good thing, because you're actually listening to like your body and working when it's right for you. And I think you can make a better society that way, a happier society.
Yeah, I don't think I've never cried at work just because I'm so detached from my emotions, but I definitely have been there and hated every second of it. Like as soon as you walk in, you just want to leave. I think there's this idea, especially with Tauruses, that they don't want to go to work, like having to wake up for work. I hate the idea of having to wake up just so I can go to work. I think that is one of the worst things in the world, personally, for me, is having to wake up for the sole purpose of going to work. I could have slept, I could have done whatever I wanted, but I had to wake up at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. just to go to work. At that point, you don't even control your own life,
Yeah.
I was once told, that a job is something you do for somebody else, and work is your life's work. So you don't wake up to go to work, you wake up to go to your job.
Thank you.
Work is your life's work.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying that, Mary.
Clarification.
I agree. I feel everything you feel, Ezekiel. I would literally go to sleep annoyed and I wouldn't sleep because I was so mad that I would have to wake up for work. And like work really fucks, or a job really fucks you up, especially when you have a kid and you can't even take care of your fucking kid because you're at work all day. It's really like just add so much layers to just like, I don't know. There's so many people who are detached from themselves and their children because they literally have to make sure that there's a place for their kids to like sleep at night. And I think that's a really horrible world.
Yeah. Another one of those fear things that, I think Mary was also talking about.
Yeah, I think work is very oppressive. I've always hated working. I've always dreaded clocking in and like just being bored out of my mind. Even if my job was so-called fulfilling, I didn't have the resources to actually, help in a way which my job was supposed to be helping the people I was working with. And I remember, yeah, it just worked very oppressive. I'm fortunate to not having to have to work for like almost 2 years now. I've been able to sustain myself without having a so-called job. So I'm really grateful for that, and that allows me to really see, okay, this is what my so-called time. But due to white supremacy, even though I haven't been working for 2 years, I still haven't used this time, what I would say, constructively. I just started using my time constructively because I've just now realized that I should use my time constructively because my race is being genocided, and I'm very late to realizing this, that I'm 29, and I'm just now realizing that black people are being genocided. So does anyone want to throw in some closing remarks, closing comments? Because I feel like we may have all discussed what we wanted to discuss for these.
Oh, I got one thing. One more question for the group. On page 66, I'm gonna go ahead and read the quote and I'll ask you the question. What should be method only becomes ideology, which rests on the following myths, according to Carl Spite: that science is fundamentally culturally independent and universal, that the only reliable and completely objective language is scientific knowledge, that science is dispassionate, unemotional, and anti-religious, that logic is the fundamental tool of science, and that the scientific method leads systematically and progressively toward the truth. The function of science in European culture becomes that of establishing an invulnerable source of authority that cannot be challenged. Uh, so he said that these were myths. I was just kind of I couldn't really understand like what he meant, like these are myths. Is he saying that science is fundamentally and culturally independent and universal is a myth? Because I don't think that's the idea, right? That science isn't a myth, right?
I think
No, but science. Oh, go ahead, sir.
I think Carl Spite is setting it up so like that science can become like a universal truth, so that you will be able to, no matter where you are, no matter who you're interacting with, no matter what part of the world you are in, you're going to be able to use science for your means. It becomes a universal truth because the European has made it such. Ashley, you something?
Oh yeah. I mean, science under white supremacy has never been objective or universal. It's always been like inherently like racist and white supremacist. So, but it's always like touted as being universal. So I think that is like a very like that is a myth. Like,
okay,
yeah.
I guess my question was also like I kind of want to go through each one and kind of like get an example of, or like kind of break it down. So the next one, that the only reliable and completely objective language is scientific language. So is that a myth?
Well, yeah, it's a myth because scientific knowledge is not completely objective, nor is it always reliable.
Okay.
Like definitely.
Okay.
For me, I understand that definitely not to be reliable, because growing up, despite what was being said as a child, I loved Mummy Returns. I don't know if anybody's seen the Mummy Returns or the Mummy or that whole franchise, but
we've seen it.
Watching that from a very early age, seeing whom they represented as Egyptian, my soul, my body just knew that wasn't it. Like I literally, this is what's so beautiful about Medu Necho. This is what's so beautiful about hieroglyphics. Your soul memory or just seeing things like that symbolism speak to you. So I don't know what it said to me, but I understood by looking at that, I understood that I was connected to that despite who I was seeing on that director. I understood that I had a connection there. And that for me is science, because later on growing up, it's what pulls in our fascinations. It's what's pulls in our interests, and then we go and research further, and then we find out and uncover the truth. So all of these things are like indicators that on an intuitive level that we then go further and find out more about. So there's definitely another knowledge source that we have access to.
Yeah, and also like I used to do like research, and literally like once you get to that like level of actually doing the scientific research, it's all like a lot of it is just like it's a lot of it is just fake. Like a lot of it is just like a lot of like times the experiments would not come out right, or the like solutions were completely different. There's so many little things that I did that fucked up my results, that I know fucked up my results, but like I didn't even know like how to explain it, or like there's just so much that people don't realize. Like when you read things about science, you think that scientists know so much, but really they're just like getting random data sets and trying to make sense out of it. And if they're trying to make sense out of it, then it's inherently not objective, right? Because they're trying to get it out of their own mind. Like, yeah.
Science is dispassionate, unemotional, and anti-religious. So I guess with Kemet, like we've been kind of discussing, like science does have that emotional, or even like what Celia was saying with Kemet, like, you know, those things are all a part of it, you know, so it's like emotion, religion, I guess. That's just what I was kind of thinking. I guess that would kind of be the alternative, or the other concept is with ancient Egypt and how they were living.
Yeah, just get back to your roots. Like I'm still studying the meta, so I don't know everything there is to know, because it's a lot of information and a lot of it is being decoded through these symbols, and it's really up to, like, it's almost like it's up to your own interpretation, you know, because we all have spirits, we all have consciousness, we all have intuition. So whatever resonates with you, and that's kind of why the meta is so beautiful, because you can interpret something and I can interpret something a totally different way, but it's all a part of the all. And as long as you're living within those laws of ma'at, you know, balance and righteousness and harmony, you know, you can't go wrong. So you know, you can kind of slowly, as you go through your journey, get into it, and that is definitely an alternative, and it's very healing. The whole process within itself is very healing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm satisfied now. I'm all good.
I have something I want to say before we like when I was reading this stuff about time, like my heart started beating really fast. I take that as a symbol and a sign that I'm receiving necessary information for my survival. And that's just me being aware of my body and how my body sends me messages. And I did really appreciate the knowledge from this book, and this book, of course. And I definitely enjoy the fact that when she mentions how Africans like examine and utilize time, how it's sacred and how it's circular. And to me, circular just means like infinite, like it's everything together always. I just am excited to get through more of the book and like continue to learn more about African oneness.
Yeah, like these 19 pages definitely furthers my like excitement and wanting to progress further in the book, because I know how much more rewarding this text becomes once we get into like after maybe the 120 areas. That's where it really like picks up, and we start getting just more knowledge that's going to allow us to understand the European and what they've been doing for about 500, 600 years to us and to each other. The time thing was a huge eye opener, but I stopped giving a fuck about what. And most of the time, I don't know what time it is or what day it is. But I keep 100 with you guys. Like I'm really like free of these constructs because the way I've been able to manifest my life is that like the only thing you really need is like money to pay rent, and as long as I have enough of that, I don't have to worry about this so-called like time. I can worry about this book club and how I'm gonna like continuously promote its growth and spread this knowledge to the masses, which is like my only concern right now.
Yeah, I wanted to read one final part of the book. Page 67, she says like, thus the danger when one adopts uncritically the science and paradigms of another people's reality is that one adopts their consciousness and also limits the arena of one's own awareness. And I think like that's a lot of people, it's us, but it's like we're unlearning all of those things. So like, but it's like all the people around us too, like their consciousness is really like brainwashed. And so it's important to like, I don't know, have patience when we try to like have these conversations because we're dealing with like a European consciousness that like has a, an African subconscious somewhere that we're trying to like reach, Yeah.
Well said, Ashley. I love that.
I wanted to read one more part too. Page 68. One problem evidenced repeatedly when Europeans look at non-European or what they consider pre-European cultures is their misunderstanding of the relationship between the one and the many, between unity and diversity. For people other than Europeans, these exist simultaneously and are not seen to be contradictory. The European most often views these conceptions as examples of the inability to think logically. Levi-Bruhl referred to the pre-logical mentality. This is because Europeans needed to be able to say that there was only one road to reality, and that road could then be controlled by one culture, one civilization, one type of person, yes, even one race. So, yeah, I really like what the author's doing here in this book. That was a very powerful statement for me. She's really doing a great job of exposing and, unconditioning us, you know, especially that last part about the one type of person. And making a statement like this and everything that she has shown to us and exposed to us, it fits. It's hard to not accept this. So I'm just very excited to see what she continues to keep talking about. These are definitely, she has a lot of things like I want to tell people, but I feel like if you don't read the book, there's like not a lot of context. Like I find myself shading, I want to show you guys, like I shaded a whole page just because I was like, all of this just hits. All of it. I'm like, I want to tell people this. I'm like, damn, I can't leave that out. I just keep going. So this stuff's very exciting. I'm very excited to see what's going on. I love everything she's doing.
Yeah, and this is like, I was called this like the advanced text. Like this is not an easy text to read or understand or digest. This is why it's really important to take notes and write down and define the terms. Like I have like all the definitions that I have from this book, ontological, like axology, like malaise, like presupposition, iconography, just a lot of words I don't know. And then I'm like comfortable to say, I don't know what the fuck she's talking about. Let me like understand what these words mean first so I can understand the text. And that's what I'm having to do for this text. And I wasn't expecting that because I think I understand myself to be really quite good with diction, but like she's just so like fucking smart, so it's hard to keep up with this text. So, but I'm glad that we all like are hanging in there. This is definitely our advanced reading group because this is not easy material at all, especially. But it could be easier if you're reading this along with the ISIS papers because they definitely validate each other.
For sure, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I went to the second little small thing. I agree. This is something I definitely have to reread a lot to like for it to one. go into my mind. I think that happens for a number of reasons. I think one, because like the European mentality that's living inside my head is constantly combating and rejecting other texts because it does not want to like leave its leave my body, aka its inhabitant. And also because the way she writes is just so advanced and
Definitely.
it reminds me of like being in school again, like being back at Berkeley and having to like figure out what the writers are talking about. It's like so complex. And I write down a list of words that I don't know every time I pick up this book and I have to go look them up. You know, so learning is fun.
Yeah,
I
but
appreciate
it gets much easier. I like it gets much easier as we further the text. I promise you all that. Yeah, but it's really
Oh,
hard
sorry.
to master to fully understand the Asili, the Tamawazo, and the Tamaroho, which is like she's definitely hammering these points in for any more
Yeah,
close.
I was just gonna say I'm certainly enjoying reading these chapters, and thank you. I'm certainly enjoying reading these chapters, and also the fact that she's drawing into the Medinetra, and it's allowing me to revisit some of the old books that I downloaded but never did read, which I'll be sharing in the group. Just understanding African-centered thought and bringing myself back to the understanding of Ma'at, which is like truth, righteous, justiceness, and order and balance. And having that principle first before anything, and then it's just opening and softening my mind to like being able to, like Isis papers, just decode what's going on in every circumstance that I'm experiencing. Like today I was working in a home for dementia patients, and one of the main complaints was how they don't know what they've done to their children for them to not be visited, and they don't understand. And it's literally what half of their rhetoric was in their mindset, like just trying to figure out what they've done to their child. And my understanding was, you haven't done nothing. Your culture has taught them not to care about you. Your culture has taught them, like, I couldn't explain it to them, and like that would take a lesson. But just being able to see that is literally embedded in your culture, that the system exists how it is. But of course, that's also money, having homes and for their elderly patients. It just constantly contributes back to the system. But yeah, I'm really enjoying being able to just basically decipher life in a more appropriate way, which is really good for my mental health.
Excellent. If there's no more closing thoughts, I like everyone to like leave this meeting thinking about our community intentions, and if you haven't read them, read them. If you haven't,
Can I say one thing before that? Can we just pick the pages we're gonna do
Oh,
next? So we just, since everyone's here.